Online lectures on scientific communication, brought to you by Professor Olga Ilchenko and Dr. Зинаїда Shelkonikova. Цикл онлайн-лекцій з наукової комунікації за програмою підготовки докторів філософії з освітнього складника «Іноземна мова професійного спрямування» для підготовки аспірантів до рівня загальноєвропейського стандарту володіння мовою С1. Лекції за модулями, загальнонародна мова та науковий дискурс, спільне і відмінне, читання наукового тексту, науково-академічне письмо, аудіювання та усне мовлення, монологічне і діалогічне. The language of instruction will be mostly English, with some Ukrainian whenever applicable. If you have any questions at all, or any comments of any kind, please email them at inglang@online.ua. The answers will be posted here. Ask great questions, enter to win a prize. Lecture 2. Читання наукового тексту. I am not a speed reader, I am a speed understander. Isaac Asimov. Learning from texts. People learn a great deal from all kinds of texts: newspapers, journals, magazines, textbooks, stories, novels, poetry, even cartoons and ads, advertisements. The process of learning from texts is complex. Such factors as coherence and cohesion of a text, зрозумілість та зв'язність тексту, is a major factor of its successful comprehension, understanding. An easily comprehensible text employs a variety of logical connectors or transition words, also known as discourse markers, such as first, then, finally, therefore, and, because, however, and many others, to facilitate textual navigation. Key words are clues that help us to better comprehend the text. Another important thing is the ability to infer what the author implies, the ability to decode implicit information. Logical connectors, also known as transition words, also known as discourse markers, also known as cohesive devices. Sequencing, linearity, first of all, second, then, next, finally, let's turning to, as far as something is concerned. Addition, additional information, and also, moreover, what is more, furthermore, in addition, additionally, besides, plus, not to mention, to say nothing of, last but not least. Purpose, aim, in order to achieve this, so that, for the purpose of, in behalf, lest. Contrast, but, however, yet, nevertheless, nonetheless, still, at the same time, on the one hand, on the other hand, on the contrary, alternatively, yet conversely, or rather, otherwise, not so with, yes, but, while, whereas, as it turns out, unfortunately, alas. Comparison, like, unlike, similarly, likewise, in the same way, in an identical manner. Restatement, in other words, putting it another way, to put it another way, put more simply, in simple terms, which means, i.e., that is to say, aka, also known as. Concession, though, although, even though, albeit, despite, in spite of, regardless of, unless. Exemplifying, for example, for instance, e.g., to illustrate this, to name a few, a case in point, like, such as, and so on, and so forth, and so on, and so forth. Emphasizing, highlighting. In particular, particularly, specifically, especially, notably, above all, needless to say, the thing is, the problem is, the question is, as a matter of fact. Reason, because, since, in that, that is why, which is why, for this reason, for the reason that, because of, thanks to, owing to, due to cause. Result, as a result, consequently, to result in, thus, hence, therefore, so. Summarizing, to sum up, in summary, in sum, summing it all up, to conclude, in conclusion, it could be concluded, in brief, briefly, in a word, on the whole, all in all. Example. Illustrations, such as graphs and figures, are often convenient and helpful to present and clarify information, but they should not simply be a repetition of data in the text or a table. In other words, if information can be conveyed clearly without use of a figure or graph, then no illustrations are necessary. However, their proper use can illustrate complicated relationships more clearly and in less space than the written word. For example, data tables are very important because they can be used to organize much of the information. In particular, these raw data allow the reader to rapidly identify what information is available and to quickly see where important results are located. Also, data tables should be complete, but must be not too complex. In order to achieve this, it is helpful to break a large table into several smaller ones to allow the reader to identify important information easily. Some writers may announce what they hope to tell you or why they are writing. Writers may repeat the main idea in the end. Sometimes following the dominant word, usually a noun, through its repetitions and transformations into synonyms will eventually lead you to the main idea. Long, length, lengthen, broad, breadth, broaden, wide, width, widen, weigh, weight, weightless, weighty, decide, decision, decisive, create, creative, creativity, sincere, sincerely, sincerity, insincerity, real, reality, unreal, luck, lucky, unlucky, luckily, simple, simply, simplify, simplification, oversimplify, undersimplify, desimplify, fame, famous, infamous, notorious, anxious, anxiety, comfort, comfortable, uncomfortable, convenience, convenient, inconvenient, use, verb, use, noun, useful, useless, rely on, reliable, depend on, dependable, agree, disagree, agreement, disagreement, write, writer, rewrite, writing, writings, author, co-author, to author, to co-author, authorial, authorship, employ, employer, employee, educate, education, educator, educational, educated, perform, underperform, overperform, performance, performing, performer, think, thought, thinking, thinker, unthinkable, to own, owner, ownership. To consume, consumer, consumption, different, differently, to differ, to differentiate between, similar, similarly, similarity, digit, digital, digitally, digitalize, digitization, important, importantly, unimportant, of no importance, mature, immature, maturity, maturation, match, mismatch, fortune, fortunate, unfortunate, fortunately, unfortunately, mistake, mistaken, unmistakable, unmistakably, will, willing, willingness, define, definition, undefined, ill-defined, logical, logically, illogical, logicality. Skimming and scanning. Skim and scan the text. When you're skimming, go through a passage quickly in order to get a general idea of what it is about. When you are scanning, look for some specific piece of information, a figure, a date, a name that you need. Individual words do not tell us much. They must be combined with other words, and readers should see words in meaningful combinations. Read in message units. Try to group the words into phrases that have natural relationship to each other. old versus new information. Sentences should begin with some old information, already known to the reader, with words or phrases from the preceding sentence. Sentences should end with new information that will become old in the forthcoming sentence. For instance, in the following example, each new sentence adds something new to communication science. This volume provides an introduction to communication science. The work defines communication, reviews its history, and provides a broad look at how communication research is conducted. It also includes chapters reviewing the most frequently addressed topics in communication science. Exercise: which sentences, A or B, should follow this one? Mind: cohesion, coherence, old versus new information. I have watched a lot of action movies lately. The correct answer is B, of course. I have watched a lot of action movies lately. Among the ones that I liked most is Star Wars. That's probably because it deals with important moral issues. The paragraph is the basic unit of meaning. If you can understand the main point of each paragraph, you can comprehend the author's message. The topic sentence, the sentence containing the main idea, is often the first sentence of a paragraph. It is followed by other sentences which support, develop, or explain the main idea. Sometimes a topic sentence comes at the end of a paragraph. Then the supporting details come first. Paragraphs are often divided by a different thought pattern, such as definitions or examples, a different organizing pattern, e.g., cause and effect, sequencing or contrast, a change of topic. Sometimes a new paragraph simply continues the same topic, but breaks it up into more manageable chunks. What are the functions of paragraphs? They help with understanding, give the reader a break, literally and figuratively, to process information. They make the page more inviting to read. The essential parts of the paragraph are topic sentence, supporting details like pros and or cons, arguments plus examples, concluding sentence, optional, logical connectors, discourse markers, transition words or sentences like forecasting statements. Now let's turn to lead-ins such as rhetorical questions. How important is this? Note: one sentence is not a paragraph. Main idea. Find the topic to identify the main idea. Preview your text and ask yourself, what or who is this text about? Read the first and last sentences of the paragraph. Authors often state the main idea there. It may sound as a summary of the other sentences in the paragraph. Examples, reasons, and facts should support the main idea. Pay attention to any idea repeated, restated in different ways, and keyword repetitions. Pay attention to phrases like the thing is, the question is, the problem is, what happens is, and in fact, as a matter of fact, and the like. In truth, the main idea can be located anywhere within a text. Main idea. Look for logical connectors of contrast. They signal that the author is going to modify the previous idea. They are though, although, even though, albeit, but, however, on the other hand, yet conversely, in contrast, unlike, on the contrary, nevertheless, nonetheless, still, regardless, in spite of, despite, not so with, even so, when in fact, while, whereas, at the same time, unfortunately, sadly, alas. When such connectors open the second, sometimes third or fourth sentence of a paragraph. Such a sentence might be the topic sentence that states the main idea. For example, inaccurate and misleading articles tend to burn through social networks. Tech companies have built tools to find misinformation and what many call fake news. Many companies have turned to artificial intelligence in hopes that fast and automated computer systems can deal with the problem. AI can speed up time-consuming steps, such as going through the vast amount of content published online every day and flagging material that might be false. But for machines, how do you code for misleading? Even humans struggle with defining it. Life is messy and complicated, and AI is still a long way from understanding that and making the final judgment call. That was the main idea. Decoding implicit information. Імпліцитна, прихована інформація, підтекст. The word explicit means clear and fully expressed. If something is explicit, there is no question as to what it means and no room for misunderstanding. Implicit or hidden information is any idea not directly expressed. Depending on context, the word implication can mean different things. Implication, indication, hint, innuendo, імплікація, підтекст, натяк, involvement, залучення, причетність, conclusion, deduction, висновок, умовивід, підсумок, результат. When we read, we need to infer or decode, extract what the author implies, alludes to. E.g., how should I know? Implication, I don't know it. Where do you think you're going? Implication, don't go there. Compare. I forgot mailing the letter. Implication, I mailed it. Versus, I forgot to mail the letter. Implication, I didn't mail it. Exercise. Identify the implication. I tried closing the door. Versus, I tried to close the door. Implied main idea. Sometimes the main idea could be stated indirectly or implied. For example, many gifted students flourish in their community and school environment. However, some gifted children differ in terms of their emotional and moral intensity, sensitivity to expectations and feelings, perfectionism, and deep concerns about societal problems. Others do not share interests with their classmates, resulting in isolation or being labeled unfavorably as a nerd. Because of these difficulties, the school experience is one to be endured rather than celebrated. Implied main idea. The idea that gifted students are happy and well adjusted in schools is a myth, is not true. Implications. Mistake versus the so-called mistake. Помилка, так звана помилка, насправді не помилка. Compare my friends versus my so-called friends, their methodology versus their so-called methodology. A myth, міф, неправда. To put it mildly, I wish I could say otherwise, м'яко кажучи, маркує пом'якшену критику. It was not optimal, to put it mildly. I wish I could say otherwise, but it was not optimal. With all due respect, з усією належною повагою до вас, але я не згодна з вами. With all due respect, I must politely disagree. Seemingly, deceptively, seductively, що лише видається. The current approach provides a potential explanation for the seemingly contradictory trends exhibited by some raw experimental data. Implication. In fact, the trends only seem contradictory, but in reality they are not. Seemingly unrelated. Related. It's easy versus it's seductively easy. Спокусливо легко. Насправді складно. not easy. It might seem, it might appear, it might be anticipated, but, however, at first glance, initially, on the surface, it is tempting, seductively easy, ideally, in the ideal situation, under ideal circumstances, in the best of all worlds, в ідеалі. But, however, in reality, in actuality, але насправді, theoretically, in theory, but in practice, don't get me wrong, зрозумійте мене правильно, не зрозумійте мене неправильно. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think this initiative is important. Implicit negation. Not impossible means possible. Подвійне заперечення. Неможливо, тобто можливо. To be beyond the scope. Виходити за межі рамки. Yet to be specified. Невизначений. An open question. Невирішене питання. Out of control. Некерований. Out of reach. Недосяжний. By the way, incidentally, маркують відхилення від основної думки. Anyway, anyhow, at any rate, but I digress. Getting back to the point, маркують повернення до основної думки. Task versus assignment, завдання. A task is a piece of work done as part of one's duties. Assignment is the act of assigning, the allocation of a job or a set of tasks. Мета, ціль, purpose. Purpose is why you do something, what you want to achieve. Aim is what you hope to achieve, general intention. Goal is specific intention, clear and concrete, implies a desired result. Objectives, smaller goals or sub-goals. Ambition, aspiration, something that you very much want to achieve in your future life and career. A possible conclusion, implication, other conclusions may be drawn as well. One conclusion, a conclusion, implication, one of many other possible conclusions. A deeper problem is the superficiality of the author's treatment of scientific ideas. Implication. Several other problems are mentioned above, and they are also deep. It's not that they are unaware of this fact. Implication. In reality, they are aware of this fact. The liquid boils at this temperature. Implication. In all cases, the liquid has boiled at this temperature. Implication. In many cases, the liquid boiled at this temperature. Implication. In that case. Plato and Aristotle. Who is an idealist and who is a materialist? How would you know? What is implied in Raphael's picture, The School of Athens? The most famous image of Plato, who was the teacher of Aristotle, found in the Vatican mural by Raphael, The School of Athens. Positioned centrally are Plato, pointing to the heavens, and Aristotle, pointing to the earth. It conveys a presumed difference between the two philosophers, Plato being an idealist, Aristotle the materialist. Figurative language, образна мова, similes, порівняння, allusions, алюзії, humor and irony, іронія та гумор, metaphors, метафори, and so on. An example of simile. Albert Einstein was once asked to explain radio communication, and he supposedly gave the following answer. You see, wire telegraph is a kind of a very, very long cat. You pull his tail in New York, and his head is meowing in Los Angeles. Do you understand this? And radio operates in exactly the same way. You send signals here, they receive them there. The only difference is that there is no cat. Examples of allusions. Achilles' heel is a weak point in a person or system that can result in its failure. From ancient Greek myth, When the hero Achilles was an infant, his sea-nymph mother dipped him into the river Styx to make him immortal. But since she held him by one heel, this spot did not touch the water, and so remained vulnerable. Kryptonite is something that can seriously weaken or harm a particular person or thing. From 1940s, in the fictional world of the cartoon and film character Superman, it denotes a green alien mineral from Krypton, the name of Superman's home planet, that has the property of depriving Superman of his powers. More illusions: the red pill and the blue pill. The red pill and its opposite, the blue pill, are popular culture symbols representing the choice between embracing the truth of reality, red pill, and the blissful ignorance of illusion, blue pill. The terms popularized in science fiction culture are derived from the 1999 film The Matrix. In the film, the main character Neo is offered the choice between a red pill and a blue pill. The blue pill would allow him to remain in the fabricated reality of the Matrix, while the red pill would lead to his escape from the Matrix and into the real world, even though it is a more difficult life. To compress or not to compress, compare. To be or not to be, William Shakespeare, Hamlet. One more illusion: Trojan horse. In Greek mythology, a hollow wooden statue of a horse in which the Greeks have concealed themselves to enter Troy. Something or someone intended to undermine an opponent. In computing, a destructive program that masquerades as an innocuous application. Humor and irony. The old idea has been dusted off and given a new life. Examples of metaphors. Chapter 7 is the heart of the book. Implication: Chapter 7 is the most important chapter of the book. The other side of the coin, the flip side, зворотний бік медалі. Double-edged sword, палиця на два кінці, палка о двох концах. Implication: негативна сторона справи. Janus face, Janus faced. Janus is a Roman god that is identified with doors, gates, and beginnings, and is depicted with two opposite faces. Examples: there is a flip side to everything. A Janus-faced politician. Implication: insincere, deceitful. Window seat – місце біля вікна, у літаку, потягу, автобусі, ресторані тощо. Window seat – еркерна канапа. In Jane Austen times, 19th century. And today? A helicopter view. Taking a helicopter view is a metaphor for rising above the detail of the situation, so that you can see it as a whole, and in its wider context. It means taking an overview, seeing the essentials rather than the details. To think outside the box. Thinking outside the box, also thinking out of the box, or thinking beyond the box, or thinking outside the square, is a metaphor that means to think differently or from a new perspective. It's about what Leonard Mlodinow calls elastic, flexible thinking. Also, it has something to do with Peter Kaufman's multidisciplinary approach to thinking. The phrase thinking outside the box refers to innovative or creative thinking. The origins of the phrase thinking outside the box are obscure. It was popularized in part because of a 9-dot puzzle introduced by John Adair in 1969. Thinking outside the box, a prank that Richard Feynman pulled on a waitress when he was in college. Richard Feynman decided to play a little fun trick on his waitress and see what she'd do if he gave her a problem that required thinking a bit outside the box. I noticed that they were always in a hurry, rushing around, so one day, just for fun, I left my tip, which was usually 10 cents, normal for those days, in 2 nickels under 2 glasses. I filled each glass to the very top, dropped a nickel in, and with a card over it, turned it over so it was upside down on the table. Then I slipped out the card, No water leaks out because no air can come in. The rim is too close to the table for that. I put the tip under 2 glasses because I knew they were always in a hurry. If the tip was a dime in 1 glass, the waitress, in her haste to get the table ready for the next customer, would pick up the glass, the water would spill out, and that would be the end of it. But after she does that with the first glass, what the hell is she going to do with the second one? She can't just have the nerve to lift it up now. On the way out, I said to my waitress, "Be careful, Sue. There is something funny about the glasses you gave me. They are filled in on the top, and there is a hole on the bottom." Richard simply left the situation and told the waitress the solution. I'd get a soup plate and then slide the glass very carefully over the edge of the table and let the water run into the soup plate. It doesn't have to run onto the floor. Then I'd take the nickel out. This harmless prank is a great opportunity for us to learn a lesson from a great mind. We are so focused on solving problems in ways that come easily to us that ignore other possibilities at our disposal. Putting it another way, let's quote Audrey Hepburn. Nothing is impossible. The word itself says, "I am possible." Critical thinking. From critical thinking to critical reading and writing. What is critical thinking? Critical thinking is the ability to analyze and evaluate information objectively and open-mindedly, to differentiate between fact and opinion, to think clearly and rationally, to make a reasoned argumentative judgment free from logical fallacies and flaws, in order to solve some problem. One of the best explanations of critical thinking comes from Linda Elder and Richard Paul. We are always making observations. From our observations we establish facts. From facts we draw inferences. From our inferences we make assumptions. We use our observations, facts, inferences and assumptions to form our opinions. We then create arguments to defend our opinions. We use analysis to critique, to review, to give an opinion or judgment, our own and other people's observations, facts, inferences, assumptions, opinions, and arguments. Bloom's taxonomy is a hierarchy of cognitive skills: remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, creating. Bloom's taxonomy: levels of understanding from lowest to highest. Remembering, listening, finding information, Googling. Understanding, categorizing data, grouping information into chunks, inferring from the data at hand, predicting future events and/or trends, paraphrasing, summarizing. Applying, acting out. Analyzing, questioning, explaining, organizing, deconstructing, correlating, calculating, answering why is something happening. Evaluating, criticizing, rating, reviewing, assessing, validating. Creating, writing, composing, painting, programming, mixing new things to create new, adapting materials, blogging, etc. Please watch this short YouTube video on critical thinking and critical reading. Fact versus opinion. A fact is something that everyone knows is true. There is no argument. An opinion is a viewpoint that other people might not share and argue about it. The following example is taken from Edward de Chazel's English for Academic Purposes, Oxford Handbook for Language Teachers. Suppose your lecturer says, "China will soon become the #1 English-speaking country in the world." Should you believe everything you are told? Most students will say no, but some would still say yes, simply because the lecturer is considered to be a reputable source. What critical questions arise from this statement? Why are no references given? Why the claim is not evaluated? When? How soon is soon? Why not India? How do you know? What are your sources? How well will they speak English? Is it going to be Chinese English? Why do the Chinese want or need to speak English? What do Chinese people think about it? Can we do anything to stop it happening? Should we? So yes, China might become the largest English-speaking country in the world, but the real question is, what percent of the English-speaking population in China will be able to communicate in English? Classical rhetoric and new rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of using language to persuade. Classical rhetoric, modes of persuasion, according to Aristotle. Ethos, building trust by establishing the author's credibility. Pathos, appealing to the audience's emotions. Logos, appealing to logic and argumentation. Kairos, perfect timing, knowing when to say what and to whom. New rhetoric, arguments, position of arguments. Stephen Toulmin's model of argument. Obligatory elements, claim, thesis statement, a key point being made, grounds, facts, evidence, data that answer the question why. Warrant, making logical connection between the claim and the ground or why the evidence supports the claim. Additional elements, backing, extra proof, rebuttal, reservation, counter-arguments and counter-examples, qualifier, linguistic devices conveying various degrees of certainty and possibility. Hermann Ebbinghaus serial position effect. Put your weakest arguments in the middle, your stronger argument in the start, and the strongest arguments in the end. Argument structure. What is an argument? An argument is a series of statements to present reasons for justifying and accepting a particular conclusion, or, simply put, a reason for or against some idea. Compare do it versus do it because. What is an argument composed of? Every argument consists of premises, claims, at least two, вихідні положення, minimum 2, a conclusion, висновок. The premises are the statements that provide the reasons or evidence supporting the conclusion. So, every argument consists of premises and a conclusion. The premises are particular statements that provide the reasons or evidence supporting the conclusion. An argument is an effort to justify a particular conclusion. The justification should be strong enough to persuade others that the conclusion is the correct one. Types of arguments. Deduction. Deduction is based on the rules of logic, on logical connections between premises and conclusion. However, it is important that premises be true. Then we speak of cogent arguments, переконливі аргументи. Otherwise, the conclusion will be wrong and we speak of weak arguments, непереконливі аргументи. Induction. Induction needs a lot of observations. The more observations there are, the more likely the conclusion is true. Analogy. Arguments from analogy are only strong when two issues are similar. Some common ways to support arguments: convincing evidence and persuasive force. Convincing evidence, authoritative sources and expert opinions. Definitions of the terms: facts, evidence, reliable information. Reasons, statistical data, visuals, diagrams, graphs, tables, maps, pictures, etc. Examples: persuasive force, emotions. Your dissertation should clearly convey a chief argument that runs through the whole manuscript. Each chapter should convey a chapter argument that should, in turn, support chief argument. Each subchapter should contain an individual argument to support both chapter argument and chief argument of the dissertation. All chapters and subchapters' arguments should be interconnected to reinforce, to enhance dissertation's chief argument. Getting back to reading. Identifying textual patterns. Definitions. Simple definition. X is Y. Classification. X has 5 types of. Comparison and contrast. X is not Z. As opposed to Y, X is Z. Argumentation and persuasion. Sound, logical, and scientifically proven evidence and explanations to back up your claims. Claim, counterclaim. Cause and effect, used for explaining. Problem, solution. Examples, commonly used for illustrating the point. Classification, grouping together objects that have the same characteristics. Advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons plus the author's opinion. Comparison and contrast address similarities between the object in question. Sometimes first comes the description of the first object, then the author moves to the next one. In charts and graphs, the author demonstrates some correlations. Description, creating a vivid picture, color, texture, process, etc. Narration, telling stories full of action and excitement. Please watch this YouTube video on reading strategies. How to Read a Paper by Professor Keshav from the University of Cambridge. The author suggests a 3-pass method for reading research papers. The first pass is a quick scan to get a bird's eye view of the paper. You can also decide whether you need to do any more passes. This pass should take about 5 to 10 minutes and consists of the following steps. Carefully read the title, abstract, and introduction. Read the section and subsection headings, but ignore everything else. Glance at the mathematical content, if any, to determine the underlying theoretical foundations. Read the conclusions. Glance over the references, mentally ticking off the ones you've already read. At the end of the first pass, according to Professor Keshav, you should be able to answer the 5 C's. First, category. What type of paper is this? A measurement paper? An analysis of an existing system? A description of a research prototype? Second, context. Which other papers is it related to? Which theoretical bases were used to analyze the problem? Third, correctness. Do the assumptions appear to be valid? Fourth, contributions. What are the paper's main contributions? Fifth, clarity. Is the paper well written? Using this information, you may choose not to read further. In the second pass, Professor Keshav recommends that you read the paper with greater care, but ignore details such as proofs. Pay attention to the unknown terms, though. Look carefully at the figures, diagrams, and other illustrations in the paper. Pay special attention to graphs. Are the axes properly labeled? Are results shown with error bars so that conclusions are statistically significant? Remember to mark relevant unread references for further reading. After this pass, you should be able to grasp the content of the paper. The third pass, as described by Professor Keshav, requires greater attention to detail. You should identify and challenge every assumption in every statement. Moreover, you should think about how you yourself would present a particular idea. This pace can take many hours for beginners and more than an hour or 2 even for an experienced reader. At the end of this pass, you should be able to reconstruct the entire structure of the paper from memory, as well as be able to identify its strong and weak points. In particular, you should be able to pinpoint implicit assumptions, missing citations to relevant work, and potential issues with experimental and analytical techniques. Such an approach is a very effective reading technique, especially for scientists. We will turn to this paper by Professor Srinivasan Keshav one more time in the forthcoming lecture when we will be discussing literature reviews. We will further proceed with writing. You will be surprised how many things related to reading are equally important for writing, and speaking and listening as well. Because whenever you read, speak, listen, or write, you need to get the gist or central main idea, stated or implied one, through the clues and or keywords. Distinguish between fact and opinion, the point of view. Identify and evaluate the arguments, to say nothing of logical connectors that will always help you navigate through texts and tests. Remember, your first page sells the book. The last page sells your next book. Mickey Spillane. Happy reading! You are on the right track. Till next time!